It was hot. I had Travis up there. It was more
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Marion County Community Redevelopment Area Agency Board meeting. If you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, if we could please have roll call
Chairman Stone,
here.
Vice Chairman Moore,
Here.
Commissioner Bryant, Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Zalek.
Here.
Thank you all. And first item of business will be to adopt two sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Bryant. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And Madam Clerk, if we could please have proof of publication?
I have proof of publication of legal ad number A 000959000 entitled Notice of Budget Hearing in Marion County Community Redevelopment Agency Board, published in the Star Banner newspaper on October 10th, 2019.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Risen, we'll get started on our first item here, which is the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. This is the annual budget for the CRA. This year, the Board of County Commissioners did adopt a higher millage rate than they had in the prior year. So that actually provided for an increase in the amount of increment revenue that went to the CRA for this year. As such, as part of the budget that we've recommended is to go ahead and proceed and continue with the current detail agreement that we've had for the Sheriff's Office for the CRA area to maintain the 5 days a week, 5 hours of service for 2 deputies each throughout there. That will be a rotating, shifting coverage to keep it so that it's not predictable, for instance. So that's one of the items that we've contributed those monies for. Also, we're looking at contributing money to coordinate with the community services operation to do a full-on final master plan for the CRA to give us essentially a strategic plan for that area. And then also we've left some monies for some other improvements in that case they come up, or those monies can actually then be shifted. We also have our grant program that's being funded. We had not, when I prepared the agenda, gotten any applications in. Literally one was turned in at 1:25 this afternoon. So what I was actually contemplating was maybe that you want to consider continuing this meeting to the November meeting, so then we can then consider any grant applications that do come in, including the one that was received today.
Very good. So our first item on the public hearing will be to look at approval for the Silver Springs Community Redevelopment Area Trust Fund fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
Yes,
So at this point in time, I'd like to invite anyone who is in the audience to come forward if you would like to speak on this particular item. I invite you to come forward now. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board.
Madam Chair, I would like to ask one question regarding the law enforcement element. I believe that we have one of our officers with us that actually is patrolling that area or looking over these details. Can I ask you a question? Sure. All right. Yeah.
Please come
yeah.
forward, yes. If you'll just give your name and address for the record.
Carlton Curtis, 692 Northwest 30th Avenue.
Also known as Superman. Hey, Deputy Curtis, one of the things that we were through there Sunday, we went out to the state park and walked some of the trails, and on our way back in, noticed some panhandling activity on the corner of County Road 35 or Baseline and Silver Spring or Highway 40.
Right.
Are you addressing that as well? Because I know that that probably contributes to some of the issues that you have out there.
I'd love to, but unfortunately, the last time we tried to enforce it, we got sued by the homeless folks. So at this point, no, we're not.
Okay.
We're trying to find a law that we can combat that with.
Okay, so we had something on the books at one time. I'm going to ask Mr. Mentor again to follow up with State Attorney and the Sheriff's Office to find out where we are on panhandling, because I've got that going on in several areas of my district as well.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
would love to be able to deal with that. So if you can get us anything, we'd be happy to work on that. So.
Thank you.
All All right, thank you.
Sure. Well,
Yes.
before you leave,
Commissioner Zalek?
can you just tell us what you guys are seeing there? Problems getting worse or better? I know we still have a lot of, tendency for drug use and some of the hotels, motels type issues. And so can you kind of just give us an overall
Yeah,
update if you don't mind?
A few weeks ago, we were out kind of doing a detail in that area, and I stopped. I'm very blunt with people, and so I stopped out with them, and I asked them. I said, "Well, why are y'all here? Why is there such an influx in this area?" And basically, their response was that they're pestered so much by OPD in the city because they do have, city ordinances and things that they can arrest them for sleeping on a park bench or sleeping in front of a business, that they're tired of getting pestered, so they've moved to the county. That's one of our biggest problems is if we could, now my understanding is that the city's getting sued, I don't know much about it, but by the homeless folks. So, the answer is, you got a Walmart, which is a huge draw for trash, just for the simple fact that they come there and they can shoplift and do what they want. And when you go check the area, there's tons of stuff around there, that packaging and things like that. Walmart's draw a lot. And then, yes, we've got a ton of the little fly-by-the-night hotels there that rent the room by the hour, by the week, by whatever they need to make their monies. And it attracts a lot of drug use and the wrong crowd. So anything we can do, and I know our guys are out there doing everything they can to combat it. They're arresting a lot of folks. They make a lot of contact with these guys out there, and that's the only thing I can think that's going to help to push them somewhere else.
Okay, well, thank you. And by the way, I think if you have contact with other law enforcement agencies, if they've passed an ordinance that seems to be working, and that may even be in regard to hotel rentals, but if you do hear about that, if you'd bring it back to us, we would like to at least investigate any opportunity to continue to strengthen our enforcement of that area.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everything y'all are doing.
Thank you.
And are we actually seeing some of the hotels out there rent by the hour?
Well, I don't think they're not gonna tell you this, but you go watch these places and these, it's very sad to see what goes on at these places, and it really doesn't matter when you're out there.
Okay.
Day, night, whenever, and you go out there and watch these places, they're looking for money.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mentor, if you'll look to see if there is some sort of enforcement of an ordinance that can go into play, when we get to new business, I've got a little conversation I'd like to have as well on some things. So at this point in time, seeing no one step forward on the public hearing to address the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, 2019-2020, I'll bring it back to the board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Gold, second by Commissioner Moore. Excuse me, second by Commissioner Zalek. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
And I'll move the increase to the detail for the community redevelopment area.
Thank you, Commissioner Zalek. Commissioner Zalek's motion is to approve and authorize for the Marion County Sheriff's Special Detail Agreement, with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Risen?
All right.
Is that it on your topics?
And that's it for my topics, although for the new business, we did, like I said, have a grant application just turned in today. As a consideration for the commission is to maybe go ahead and recess this meeting for a meeting on November 19th, which is the next zoning date at 1:50 PM. That way we can take up that grant application and any others that may come in.
So Commissioners, under new business, I did go out with some deputies recently and take a tour of Silver Springs, and really appalled at what goes on in the daylight hours.
And after dark, it's worse.
I've been after dark, but not as recent as I have during the day. And one of the things I think that could be very beneficial is cleaning up some properties. And one of our grant that we are offering, if I'm right, Mr. Risen, is for some property cleanup.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, I mean, I would like us to enforce getting some properties cleaned up, and we're willing to help with the CRA dollars. I mean, that is a grant, so can we force a grant on some of these property owners?
I can look into our code enforcement obligations for what we do have for those. We do have, we've had considerations for property cleanups and vegetation overgrowth, but we've not had those actually ultimately adopted through the commission. I can look to see though what powers we do have, and then try to unite them with code enforcement action along with offering the grant for that properties.
Mr. Mentor?
The question was, can we force a grant on somebody?
No.
I don't think you can force.
But we can force the cleanup of
You
properties.
can subject it to code enforcement and couple that with the offer of the grant if they want to take advantage of that, so.
Otherwise, they'd be responsible for the whole, yes, Commissioner Zalek?
No, no, and we've kind of gone through this in the beginning period of forming the CRA, because one of the things, as part of the CRA that we've committed to the citizens was more code enforcement in that area. And so Sam has brought more code enforcement, but the problem with that is that we're looking for enforcement that is different than the code enforcement we have countywide, right? I mean, we don't enforce somebody's lawn
Yeah.
if it's so high or so low. We don't enforce, you know, all those different things. That's why we've looked to adopt an architectural structure for when new buildings get built, and we've put some of those other pieces in place. If you want to go to a different route or to a different code, maybe because there's a CRA, there's the opportunity to change the actual ordinances in a certain geographical area for code enforcement. Because I think that's what you'd have to do. You'd actually have to change what we enforce in that area. Or I guess maybe a better way to have it is we would have to have stricter standards inside the CRA than we do for the general, because you cannot, the reality is you can't apply rural, most of the unincorporated Marion County, we can't put standards on rural Marion County across the board that maybe we would want for a specific redevelopment area.
I greatly appreciate that, and you're right. But for this particular area, I think we may have to step in and do that based on what you see there. Some of these properties are overgrown, and if you walk past the overgrowth on the outside, you see the filth that these people are squatting, I'm gonna say, and it breeds bad behaviors out there.
And I drive it every single, I mean, it's my district, right?
Yeah, right. So
And we
Commissioner
drive
Zalek,
it
what do you wanna do?
we drive it
Yeah.
every single day. The first step was getting more code enforcement out there in the first place, right? That's what we kind of did this first year. The next step we did was we put more law enforcement out there. Now, if we want to take the third step and do that, and then at the end of the day, if we don't, or private businesses don't acquire some of those properties and redevelop them, it's going to be a struggle, because as the deputy told us, the laws are they are much more persistent in moving people out of downtown Ocala, right? I mean, there's no secret. They want to move people that are homeless or on the streets out of downtown Ocala, and they're pushing them to I-75, past I-75, down south, or out on Silver Springs Boulevard.
All I want to do is create healthy, safe environments
Right.
for people in Marion County.
We have
I'm
our-
not trying to push people, I'm just trying to create healthy, safe
But at the end of the day,
environments.
until we get to the point where we can redevelop some properties, whether that's even affordable housing or senior housing, and redevelop some of those hotels into something besides day rentals, it's gonna be a problem.
Right.
But in these properties that are vacated and abandoned, where we are seeing people take up residence that are trespassing basically on private properties, I think we need to clean out that undergrowth and make sure that even when law enforcement drives up, they're able to see through and see what's going on in those areas.
So, and you might have said this while I had to step away, I apologize, but could we possibly use, if we don't have anybody applying for the grants, could we possibly use some of the grant money to do a little more cleanup
We already
in
have
that
it.
area.
There is a
we already have it
grant that
budgeted
we
for
can
cleanup, don't we?
offer.
N-
That is
but
one of our grants, and we could potentially increase the amount available for that as an
Okay,
alternative.
so let me rephrase this then. Maybe what we need to do is start contacting these property owners, making sure that they're aware that this grant is available, pushing them to apply for the grant so that we can get the cleanup done, because that's gonna be the first step.
Right. That was my question. Can we target property owners and make that offer
Sure, you can do
to Mr. Mentor's
And we
point?
are preparing that, actually. We've been looking at generating a notice that we can send out to them and emphasize that cleaning up underbrushing properties is one of the activities.
So what's a priority that we can expect that those letters would go out with that grant offering?
We can have that out within the next couple of weeks. We're looking at linking it to our website, and our website's under update right now, so we don't wanna direct them to our website when it's not up yet.
Okay, and Madam Chair, could we also work in conjunction with law enforcement, and if we do have properties where we are seeing, people trespassing, go ahead and work in tandem with law enforcement for them to go ahead and be able to trespass people who are on those properties without the owners being there? You might have the,
He's gonna give you the same
Gonna
answer.
give you
You've
the
gotta
same
have the, you have to have the permission from the
That's what I'm
property
saying,
owners. And a
right.
lot of times the property owners don't wanna do that.
well, and that's what I'm saying, though, work in tandem with them, not telling them that they have to do that as part of the grant process, but asking them while we're going through this process and cleaning their properties up, if they'd be willing to do that.
It's already been,
And we've had really good luck with that. One of the properties that the commissioner was talking about, Commissioner Stone was talking about, is one of the putt-putt places out there. And we do in fact have a trespass authorization for that. There's another property that I've noticed the other day, actually, I was just off duty driving by, and I noticed a couple of the homeless folks coming off of it that we've got a trespass authorization on. So I'm gonna work with the deputies this week on getting back out there. Some of them have been trespassed and we'll be able to arrest them. Some of them are just new to the area and maybe don't even know. So we will definitely get in there and work on that. But we've had really good luck with getting these trespass authorizations signed by the owners, because when you tell them, hey, liability is gonna fall on you guys when these guys get hurt or whatever, all of a sudden they're ready to start signing and doing what they need to, so.
And if you see any properties that you think we should be targeting as far as the cleanup is concerned, can you also let county staff know that as well?
Sure.
Maybe something that we're missing,
Oh, yeah, and we've been working with Chris Risen really,
which I doubt
really
Chris is
closely.
missing anything.
Yeah, to do this, and it's just like anything, it's a time-consuming project, but I think in the long run, it's gonna benefit everybody here, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next step, to Commissioner Zalik's point, is the stricter ordinances for this particular area.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to ask Guy and Sam and Chris to, can you have different regulations inside a CRA from a code enforcement standpoint?
Yeah, I think you can do that.
Madam Chair.
So what those are and how they would be applied, Madam Chair, would be, I think, have the county administrator direct staff to bring us back recommendations.
Okay.
Also, I think if Mr. Mayor's office could work with Tim McCourt's office at the Sheriff's Department, maybe they can try to look and find what would be the best
Sure.
work. And then that'll probably be the best way to do it, see what we can legally do.
And do we want to take a look at whatever ordinance that the city has in place in downtown Ocala as far as loitering is concerned, and see if we can apply any of that
Well,
if it's not being challenged?
I looked at, it's been a long time, but when the city adopted a new ordinance, I looked at it. I think I sent you all an email when it first came out and said I had concerns about the legality of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the deputies saying they've been sued, but the board will recall that we got sued and had to pay like $100,000 in attorney fees to the ACLU for a homeless or a panhandling ordinance years ago.
Yeah.
Before I came here. So the challenges of these types of ordinances are making them even more difficult to come up with something that's enforceable. But, I'll be happy to work on it some more.
Just check and see if there's
Yeah.
anything that we're missing
Sure,
that maybe we
okay.
can implement.
Thank you, Mr. Mentor. We appreciate that. So at this point in time, then, it has been suggested that we continue this meeting till our next meeting, November the 19th.
I'll move the continuation until November
Second.
19th.
At 150?
at 1:50. So I've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek to continue this meeting to November the 19th, 2019 at 1:50 PM with a second by Commissioner Bryant. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Risen.
Madam
and-
Chair, just
yes.
for clarification, to understand what you expect to come back on the higher level of standards for that CRA area,
Yes, sir.
are you looking at something for property maintenance? Is that what you guys are looking for?
A stricter ordinance to keep it clean and, I'm gonna say visibly visibly throughout the entire property, that you can visibly see
So it's
the
property maintenance in general,
Property
what you
maintenance.
wanted to see some standards on, which we don't have countywide.
But we wanna look for just the CRA
CRA.
area.
Yeah,
And
right?
I think also, I mean, just out of for my own curiosity, I don't know if but are there ordinances that can have hotel standards in them as well, or motels?
I don't know about that.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
what
we can look into it, but as far as the CRA, I guess my thought is that in order to establish a CRA in the first place, you have to indicate that it's like a blighted area.
Yes, and that's been done.
So the whole idea of setting up the CRA is you're trying to cure that blighted area. So that would seem to be consistent with adopting different standards within the CRA.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
And the great news is, we've got a grant to help them. If that, up to, what is it, $7,500?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so, okay, great. Thank you very much. We're gonna take about a 5-minute recess, and we need to do that for technicality reasons, and then we'll get started with our zoning. So we appreciate everyone's patience that's here for the zoning. Welcome everyone to the afternoon portion of our County Commission meeting pertaining to planning and zoning and DRC waiver requests. We'll begin our meeting first by asking you all to stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you'd please do roll call.
Chairman Stone,
Here.
Vice Chairman Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Bryant. Here. Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Zalik.
Here.
While we have you, would you like to go ahead and give our proof of publication?
Yes, I have 3 proofs of publications. First one is I have proof of publication of legal ad number A 000958108 entitled Notice of Public Hearing to Close and Abandon Roads, published in the Star Banner newspaper on September 17th, 2019. I have a proof of publication of legal ad number A 000958023 entitled Notice of Public Hearing to Close and Abandon Roads, published in the Star Banner newspaper on September 1st, 2019. And then I have a proof of publication of legal ad number A 000959067 entitled Notice of Intent to Consider Adoption of an Ordinance, published in the Star Banner newspaper on October 1st, 2019.
Very good. Thank you so much. There are some big red signs on the door as you came in. I hope you saw that and will take this opportunity to go ahead and silence your phones or any other electronic device if you have one with you. If you do need to have a conversation on that device or with anyone in the audience, I'll ask you to please take that out into the foyer. You'll still be able to hear the proceedings inside the chambers. And to get us started, I'd like to ask our County Attorney to please lay out the ground rules for the day.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today, ladies and gentlemen, all the items on the agenda, whether on the consent agenda or the agenda for individual consideration, are all what's considered quasi-judicial matters, either zonings or special use permits and the DRC waiver requests. And so that means that the Board of County Commissioners, when they hear these applications, are basically sitting like judges in court. And so the presentation involves the presentation of factual evidence, or if somebody had a consultant with them, like an engineer or a real estate appraiser, those consultants could give opinion evidence. But other than that, regular lay people are supposed to give presentations of factual evidence. So the Board of County Commissioners, as they consider these applications, is really not interested in whether or not a majority of people in the room are in favor or against the particular request, or whether you like it or you don't like it. The important thing is, what are the factual issues, that this application is going to bring 50% more traffic down my road. It's a noxious use that's going to create noxious gases or something like that, some factual information, whatever it may be. Or if you're in favor of it, if you can give factual testimony concerning the benefits of this particular application. Again, it doesn't do you much good to just say, please tell me if you like it or not, because the board doesn't vote on these things based on how many people like them or not. So at the beginning, we'll have a listing of the consent items. The 6 items on the consent agenda are items that, as of today, we have not received any indication of opposition. However, if you're here today and you feel like you didn't have a prior opportunity to express opposition to any of these items, when they're called, raise your hand. And if you have a question about the item or if you're opposed to it, when you raise your hand, we will take that particular item out of the consent agenda and put it on the agenda for items that the board will consider one at a time. If nobody has any question, or if nobody has any objection to the consent agenda items, when Mr. Martzoff reads those off, the Board of County Commissioners will adopt all of those items with a single motion. Again, that's just the consent agenda items, which are the first 6 items. After that, we'll get into the DRC waiver request that we relate to closing of a couple of roads, and then finally we'll get into the individual items for consideration. On the hearings for the individual items, normally the applicant will come up to the podium and explain what he or she is requesting from the board. Then they will sit down and it'll be open to the public to come up to the podium, and you can use either of these podiums, and we encourage you, if there are several people, to come up to each one of them and take turns so that we can speed up the hearing today. But give your name and address when you come to the podium, and we need that for the record. And then again, give the factual information you have for the board that's relevant to the request. One thing that I would encourage you to do, if for instance you feel like I didn't get notice about this previously, a lot of times people waste half of their time complaining about not getting notice, but they're right here speaking, so it's a waste of their time to talk about not getting notice when you're here anyway. So focus your energies on what your main concern is, and make sure the board hears whatever your main concern is. That's the important thing. After all the public, everybody who's raised their hand has testified, the chair will ask once again, is there anybody else that wants to talk about this item? And that should alert you, if you have any concern at all, come up right then, because otherwise the chair will close the public hearing. And then they will invite the applicant back up to respond to any concerns that any of you have raised. After that, the board will go into deliberations and they'll make their decision on the case. But again, each person gets to talk one time except the applicant. They make the application, they sit down, you respond with your comments, and they get to come back up and answer questions. But the general public only gets one opportunity. So whatever's on your mind, get it out when you're up here at the podium. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mentor, for such a great detail, and I'm sure you'll keep us straight if we stray. At this point in time, we'll welcome Mr. Martzoff to go over the consent items on the agenda today.
Thank you. Sam Martzoff, Marion County Growth Services Director. The 6 items on the consent, I'm going to read off and then ask if anybody has any questions or wants any of those pulled. First is 14A1 1910-01Z. It's a meal, Cleofit, and it's rezoning from B2 to RC1. 14A2 is 1910-02Z, Tammy Bobo Trust. It's a rezoning again from B2 to B4. 14A3 is 1910-03Z. It's B. Smith Hialeah and Barry Smith. It's a rezoning from B2 and R4 to A1. 14A4 is 1910-07 SU, CLD Properties LLC. It's a renewal of a special use permit. 14A5, 1910-08 SU, it's Young Life Incorporated. It's a special use permit in A1. And 14A6 is 1910-10 SU, RLR Investments, a special use permit in a PUD. Anybody wish to have any of those items pulled?
So what's going to happen now if we don't see anyone who pulls any of these items? When the board does take an action on these 6 items, they will be approved or otherwise as we move forward, and there's no other time to address any of these 6 items that have just been referenced. So would anyone like any of the 6 items that were just referenced pulled? If not, I'm going to bring it back to the board.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Bryant to approve the 6 items. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. If you are here for any of the first 6 items that we just referenced, those have been approved, and we welcome you to stay, or you're welcome to leave at this point in time.
Run while you can.
Thank you for being with us today. That's going to take us to 14B with DRC waiver request and public hearings.
Thank you. 14B1 is a DRC item. It's for to consider the adoption of a resolution to close and abandon a certain portion of Southeast 162nd Court. It's located in Silver Spring Shores Unit 41, which is has been replatted, if you will, with an unrecorded plat to Twin Lakes Ranches, I believe in the late 90s. The, what's on the screen now, or what could be on the screen, is the old plat, the Silver Spring Shores plat, and then the aerial here will show what's happened new. It's very, let me grab that mouse. It's fairly faint, but the property lines are in here. Now they're all very large lots as part of this Twin Lake Ranchettes. So what happened as a result of that was this road dead-ended right here, and in fact became kind of part of her lot with a cul-de-sac, or not a cul-de-sac, but a turnaround for her driveway right in front of her house. So she's asking to abandon that. It serves no purpose. It's a dead end. DRC recommended approval.
Very good. Do we have the applicant with us today? Would you like to come forward, give your name and address for the record, and any additional information that you'd like to add before we open it for public comment?
I'm Sylvia Hood, and I'm at 10149 Southeast 162nd Court in Ocklawaha, Florida. And that's all that it is, that it's dead-ended at the wrong place when they redid the, I guess when the developers stopped developing. They didn't finish what they had started, and the road ended in the middle of the lot instead of where it should have, and I would like to correct that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wood. We're going to now, well, I should ask any board members if you have any question, comments. If not, then I'll open it to the audience. If there is anyone here wishing to speak on this item, I invite you to come forward. Being none, there's nothing for the applicant to address as well, so I'll bring it back to the board for any. I've got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Zalek. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Wood. That should take care of that. Next.
Next is 14B2. It's a, again, a DRC item to consider the adoption of resolution to close and abandon a portion of a 50-foot wide unnamed platted road right-of-way in the town of Fairfield. On the screen now is the lots in question, and I'll show you this portion of the aerial consists of one lot that's been combined from the 1890s plat. This owner happens to own this piece to the south as well, so he wants to make that whole again. And this is the church site, and this is a separate owner. The church site, or whoever previously owned it, was able to get a portion of this right-of-way abandoned initially, so this owner would just like to go ahead and abandon their part. It doesn't serve as access to anyone else, so DRC recommended approval.
Very good. Do we have the applicant with us today? Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leela Matthews, 7800 Northwest Highway 316, Fairfield, Florida.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews.
Been in our family since it was established. Came from Fairfield County, South Carolina, and we now have Fairfield, Florida. And we own both sides, and we'd just like to put it back together.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Gold to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. That takes care of both of our DRC waivers. They've both been approved. Thank you for being with us today. That's going to take us now to planning and zoning items for individual consideration, and we welcome Mr. Risen.
Good afternoon, this is Chris Rise with the Growth Services Department. Our next item is a expansion for the Ashley Farms Water Treatment Plant, which is located on Northwest 44th Avenue. This is an existing plant which was initially constructed for the Ashley Farms development, now called Ocala Preserve Trilogy. It has currently 2 wells and a ground storage tank. They'll be adding the additional wells and an additional ground storage tank, and maybe replacing the high service pump building as well, or expanding that as well. Staff is recommending approval of the request. This is not on consent because there was one concern raised from one of the neighboring property owners. Their concern, however, was a general concern about groundwater withdrawals and water being so of such a concern for that in that regard. The project has been updated a little bit. There was an updated plan that was provided to provide some additional buffering information for the properties to the south and southwest, which are the Ocala Preserve Trilogy project, as they were concerned about the additional development that would be on that site and providing for screening and buffering to that site. And those are reflected in the conditions of the request to match the site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Risen. Do we have the applicant with us today?
He's up here.
You have anything else you'd like to add?
I think Jody should have to say something.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can we go over the buffer though? Because I don't ever think we put enough buffer around these things.
Okay, certainly.
If
So,
441 is any example.
I'm not sure which one of you would, Mr. Kirkman, would you like to go ahead and identify yourself, please?
I would,
Make it
thank
look
you.
better.
For the record, Jody Kirkman, Environmental Services Director.
Yeah, make it look
Yes, as the applicant, I'm here, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Chris did a great job, basically, just with the intro.
So I think Commissioner Zalek has some issues on or would like to clarify the
Yeah.
buffering.
Can you show us the pictures? Do you have pictures of the actual site? What it looks like today? We had one in here, but hard to tell.
So these are the pictures that were generally provided. If you'll notice on the left here is where 44th Avenue is, this being the driveway into the site. This is looking across towards the groundwater storage tank. There's a D-ray there, and then this is the actual mechanical building. I'm afraid there's not some other pictures in this aspect.
Well, and we're talking about possibly incurring more of pump house and other bigger pieces of equipment as well, right?
Right. What occurs, this is the high service pump location that's probably the most proximate to the roadway. This is something that they're not completely sure they will need at this point in time. They're still evaluating that. In the past, it's actually sometimes been an open air type structure because it's just the pumps underneath it to keep them protected from the direct environment exposure. There is a 6-foot berm that does run down this the side here. However, it has settled a little bit. It's down to about 5 feet. They are proposing that they would top it with a hedgerow that would be planted there. And then the type D buffer would run here alongside, but instead of a wall, they're providing the berm. And there's an existing berm there, and that berm is 6 foot in height. And they'll be vegetating that consistent with the type D standards. And then they're proposing a type C buffer between the Ashley Farms maintenance complex, but then there's Ashley Farms lots that will ultimately sit over in this area over here.
Commissioner Zalek?
Yes, my same comment is that putting a hedgerow, 3 to 4 foot, maybe, it never solves anything. So, actually, one of the interesting things was I got to go on the farm tour the other day, and they're looking at buffering and how they're doing some of those things, and they've got. It was really neat to see it fully grown. Is that they have what would be probably a medium cover, and then the bigger trees kind of grow up behind it. Maybe something, I mean, we need something that goes vertical because of the height of these big tanks out there, right? I mean, if you go down 441, you look at the hedgerow on top of the berm, it barely helps because how tall is this thing? Jody, do you know how big those tanks? They're gotta be 30 foot, right? 20,
This
30
tank's
foot?
probably in that neighborhood, yes.
Right, so you put a 4 foot hedgerow on top of a 6 foot, you've only covered maybe a third of it, depending on line of sight. I don't know what the future is. We can maybe bring it back, but certainly painting them a different color besides white is probably a good idea. I don't know what else.
Do you rather build a berm and a buffer or do something on the tank like the other
And that's
stuff
kind
we
of up
looked
to the
at on
commission.
441?
I think that's just up to the commission in each circumstance. It probably needs to be evaluated, right? This one, you know, is on a corridor, but it's not on the main corridor, right? So, you know, but if you don't put the berm plus vertical shrubbery and then bigger trees behind it, you'll never break up that silhouette, right? I don't think, versus what we can look like. This is just my opinion. So I'd prefer to see that we have in here some kind of vertical buffer that at line of sight would buffer the 30-foot tank, or at least break it up.
So would
You
that
know.
mean moving the buffer around the tank itself?
I think you could just plant on top of that berm, but planting something that's going to grow to a, you know, 8 or 9 foot shrub, or putting vinyl fencing that's 6 foot on top of the berm, right? Kind of almost like what we have next door here. They've got a berm that goes up, then they have that wall that goes on top of it. It may be better just to put some kind of vinyl fencing in, and then put bigger trees every so often to break up the, and that's kind of what they're doing at IFAS, to break up. I mean, they have the, I think it's big cedars behind those other shrubs,
The shrubs,
right?
yeah.
So it's a shrub view, or, you know, that kind of thing. They have it at Legendary on 80th. If you look at it, they got a berm, then they have the medium stuff, and then they have the bigger stuff. And when those things grow in, they break up all of that line of sight. And they look much better than just a berm with a hedge on it, right? So that's why I was trying to figure out what the best thing is, because we have spent a bunch of extra money on vegetation, even on 441. And I don't think we've gotten the results we wanted. I don't, maybe you could speak to that, Angel.
If you'll just
Still small.
identify yourself, please.
Yes, Angel Russell, Assistant County Administrator of Public Works, and like Commissioner Salak said, it takes a little bit of time. They're still small trees. Of course, we're maintaining and watering them, and in the future, they should cover
Hopefully.
that tank. But at this point, they're small still.
But I think on 441 too, we're gonna bring you back some options of what can be done at the tank, on the tank itself.
Okay.
And I think you're gonna like some ideas what we have.
Yep.
So again, if we're going to plan on expanding this for the future, more pump houses, more assets out there, more things, then we just need to make sure we have a buffering plan that's actually going to cover them versus just our standard. 'Cause I just don't think our C-type buffer, if we meet the requirement of the code,
I agree.
it's not gonna get it done. So if you guys don't wanna do it on some of these, I'm okay with
Yeah.
that too. I'm just bringing that up, because I
I think
think
it's a great
it should come with our plans.
conversation. Mr. Risen, you have something you want to add?
And well, one of the things that I can tell you, I did discuss with some of the staff from the utilities offices, is along this side of the road is where the large power lines are. The larger power lines are on this side of the roadway. So if they start getting into large trees, would either need to push further back away from the property line, which would be beyond the existing berm that is currently in place. An alternative is to provide actually more accent or ornamental type trees that are with the buffer and on the berm, along with the hedging that's provided. So that way it would give a vertical aspect to it to help break up that visual view.
Yeah, I think we need something vertical and trees that are planted closer together than every, I don't know, what is our standard, 100?
It depends on the buffer type, and I don't remember what C is right now.
Yeah,
25
on
to 50
C,
is
it's
usually.
5 for every 100.
I'd almost, and maybe for the future, we don't have to have that discussion today, but I think it'd be great to get an expert from IFAS in
Yeah.
on a workshop one day and just give us a buffering, almost have a buffer workshop. You know, and I think we get better at that over time. I mean, one of the other things that we saw even in Kentucky was the fact that they were constantly using, got rid of a bunch of hedges, put in horse fencing. I think that would look much better in many of our areas instead of having this. I mean, besides, retailers hate planting that stuff anyway, right? I mean, they don't want to plant shrubs. They'd much rather put 2 or 3 trees in and put a row of what would look like horse fencing if we came up with the right criteria, and have that start spreading across our community as the horse capital. I think that's just part of our overall branding we should look at.
Possibly. So let's see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to come forward on this topic. Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board.
Move for approval?
Second.
Can we move for approval with additional vertical buffering?
Where I was going to.
Okay.
Would you like to see that?
I would just at least Chris, we don't have to go where we have to start moving off that buffer, but even if it's ornamentals, I'm sure you guys we're smart enough to figure out how high we can go with the tree and all that kind of stuff, but give it a vertical, I think we just give it a vertical element if you guys don't mind.
Yes, sir.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant to include some additional vertical buffering on that berm, with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ken Ware, Upper Growth Services. Let's see. This is case 191004, special use. The request is for a packaged liquor store within 500 feet of a church, school, or park. The location is on Northeast Jacksonville Road, just south of Northeast 95th Street in Anthony. It's 0.9 acres. And it has commercial land use with B2 zoning. The property currently is a internet cafe. Sorry, I had to think about that. And it's located in the centralized commercial area of Anthony. The use is compatible with land use and zoning. And for package sales, customers have to leave the premises to go somewhere private to consume. So staff is recommending approval. P&Z recommended approval, and we have the conditions if you would like them, but the applicant is here.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff.
Question for staff.
Yes.
So
Commissioner Zhao.
are the hours in chapter 3 the same as what was listed in on our agenda in the first place?
No. So it's the hours in the chapter 3 of the ordinances is 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. and then no Sundays.
Okay. So staff crossed it out, why?
During the Planning and Zoning Commission, that became a discussion point, and
Okay.
really didn't have a reason as to why we should regulate that when we already have an ordinance regulating that issue.
Thank you.
That's you.
Sure, Brian's a little familiar with that, huh?
Thank you.
There's the site.
So we do have the applicant that is with us today. You did say, if the applicant is with us and would like to come forward. Good afternoon. Welcome.
My name is Yashwant Kumar Patel, 9383 Northeast Jacksonville Road, Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we're going to see if there's anyone in the audience who has any comments, and if so, then we'll ask you to address them.
Okay.
Thank you. At this point in time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this particular topic and this request that we have before us today, which is a special use permit for a packaged liquor store within 500 foot of a church, school, or park? Seeing no one in the audience, I'm going to bring it back to the board.
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
So, the internet cafe is closed or is closing?
It will, if the special use permit is allowed, then the building will sell.
Okay, all right.
Change
That's
uses.
all I had. Thank
I'll
you.
move for approval.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant.
Let me just say something. We
Can
have
I
a
get
lot.
a second on that?
I'm not gonna second it.
I'll second.
We got a
Okay, with a
second.
second by Commissioner Gold, and I'm sorry, now further discussion?
Just, we have the rule about being 500 feet from school, church for a reason, so I think we should kind of, stick to it. If we're gonna have that rule on the books, we kind of should stick to not having liquor stores near schools and churches and daycares.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any other comments from the board? We've got a
I
motion.
think we have by the
Go
way,
ahead.
just for discussion point, I think we typically have had different hours on these things, especially in small towns. So with those hours, I can't support it.
So I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant with a second by Commissioner Gold. All in favor?
Aye.
Those dissenting?
Aye.
That motion passes with Commissioner Zalek and Commissioner Moore dissenting. Thank you. That's going to take us to 14C3.
Sorry, coconut's good.
Good afternoon. Kenneth Odom, Marion County Growth Services. Case number 191005, special use. This is for 5 private RV pedestals in A1 agricultural. The area is in the far northwest portion of the county at the intersection of County Road 320 and I-75. It's very rural in that area. It's approximately 60 acres. It's surrounded by other rural land uses as well as complete A1. The applicant, Ms. Jessica Markham, is requesting to install 5 RV pedestal hookups. She's only requesting electric and water at this location. There will be no septic at the location at all. The purpose of the pedestals are for on-site family-related, equestrian-related events where they have built a roping arena. It's for family and friends only. We have been out, had a look at the site, have recommended additional conditions to go with the site. The reason we're bringing this before you today, actually, there has been no written opposition. However, there was one inquiry from an adjacent neighbor. They were concerned about possible noise pollution, light pollution. We have made sure that conditions have been applied to address both of those as well. And actually, Mrs. Markham has assured us that there will be no PA system installed because this is not a public event, it's only for private, as well as there were some groundwater concerns. And as it shows here, they are planning on having the RVs be self-containing. There will be no dump sites on property at all. This is the area that it's located. Like I said, it's in the very northern portion of the county. County Road 320 is just south of the subject parcel. You can see that it's surrounded by rural lands and A1 zoning with a little bit of public recreational space owned by DEP to the northwest. This is a close-up of the property itself. The residence on the property, the primary residence is located at the very southern border. The roping pen is in the middle of the pasture area, which used to be farmland area. And then also to the north is where the pedestals will be constructed. And like I said, there are to be 5 locations. They will be using this primary entrance next to the residence. It is fortified against with the driveway, so it will not tear up the side of the roadway. That is to the top left. This is the area where electric and well already exists. Through the permitting process, they will have to make sure that these areas are sufficient in order to support their requests. And one other reason that we are bringing this to you as well, there's been some concern that's been brought to our attention by Mr. Richard Bastille, who is an RV park owner here in the northern portion of the county. There's been some concern on his part as far as some of these RV locations popping up, these pedestal sites popping up on private properties, under the guise of being used as for personal use, family use. It's come to our attention that they have been solicited and sometimes for rental, and we are concerned about that with the World Equestrian Center opening up. Several of these have been approved through the past year. We're trying to make sure that that is not going to be a problem. We have already been in contact with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as the clerk of the court. They are collaborating with Marion County Growth Services in order to make sure that this doesn't happen with this site. They also have full intention of going back and checking on other approved sites that have happened in the past, and that's something we'll be incorporating into any type of similar use in the future. So with all of that being said, staff is recommending approval of this location with the applied conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Odom. Have all of the conditions been reviewed with the current?
Yes, ma'am, and she indicated at the P&Z meeting that she was fine with those conditions as well.
Okay.
And she is in the room today.
Any questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner.
This is not for rental, for family use?
That is
only?
exactly correct, sir, and it is listed that way in the special conditions. We've actually gone as far to say that if there were any transient, or there is to be no transient solicitation for rental, but we've even gone a step beyond that, supplied her with Department of Revenue forms
Yeah, I saw that.
and taxation, just so she's aware of what wouldn't be necessary if that use was to be changed under a different special use, but to let her know what the consequences would be through that.
And just, do you have any idea what the closest dump site is for them if they emptied these?
No, sir, I do not. But like I said, it's not something that was to be included at this location. There is no septic at this location other than for the primary residence.
All right, thanks.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Zalek.
So, have you looked back at any of our older ones of these over the last few years?
No, sir, we didn't. And the reason why is
I'm
because
trying to remember one. I'm trying to remember if I don't recall us doing any that didn't have a septic tank as part of this plan. So that's why I was asking. Do we have them without it?
I'm sure that there probably are. Sam, do you know? Hold on one moment, Sam.
There may be a few older ones. I think the last one that we had any concern about, we actually put a provision in there that they must provide septic. And we altered the conditions in this to make sure that if they need to do that, they're allowed to do that with the conditions that we have.
Sam, are there any limitations on how long somebody can stay in one of these RVs on this site?
Not in the special use permit, no, sir. And in the RV parks, I don't believe there is either. The RV park owner is here that spoke to you earlier in a
Right.
regular meeting.
So I mean, just hypothetically, somebody, family members, right? You know, you could get, you have a farm, you get something like this, and quite frankly, you can have your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, you know, whoever, I mean, up to 5 spots, and just have them grab an RV and park out on that land.
Right.
Okay, but if you own an RV in Marion County, and you park it next to your house, and you hook it up, what are the limitations there?
As long as it's yours and it's not occupied, you can have it there as long as you want to.
Right, but you can't sleep in it.
If it's occupied, 60 days. That's the limitation, 3 times a year.
3 times a year, yeah, so first of all, I think there should be some kind of, that should be some kind of rule that everybody else in Marion County has to follow.
Right.
If that's the one we want to keep, if we want to get rid of it, that's fine, but I think it should be the same and fair across the board. The second thing is, I don't think we should put any of these anywhere that don't have a septic tank.
I agree.
And thirdly, I'm not sure that we really, I think with the World Equestrian Center and even what we've been seeing over the last few years, especially Commissioner O'Brien can testify to this, you know, with HITS and the horse shows, I'm not sure what I really think we need to do, especially since we know that these types of industries are being abused, and it is actually worse on some of these RV parks that have to go through all the regulation of having it. I think if we do these, we need to put them in a category that we need, and then, you know, they need to get permitted each year and have at least one visit from our team to make sure they're not selling on the internet, VRB, and that they are actually hooked up to a septic tank and, you know, that those things. Because just a few months ago, we had one where we let them have a security one. It comes back in, it transitions ownerships. They never come and apply until one of our people catch them. They have all the stuff just land applying, if you will. And so we have an issue with these things.
Oh, it's all over the county, yes, sir.
And it's all over the county,
All over the
yeah. And again, until we come in and for the fairness of these other folks that are putting in infrastructure, I just don't think that these kind of things are appropriate without the right conditions. So
Yeah,
just my 2 cents.
It's the #1 request that we get in the zone, on the
Number
zoning
one.
side, every day, day in and day out. It's the
We obviously
#1
need to do
thing that
something,
the code
commissioners.
enforcement officer chases around. and
Right.
All over the county. Part of the reason that we were sticking and trying to stick with the self-contained unit is it would deter people from doing long-term stays. So if it works out, and this applicant can address that nobody's gonna be there longer than a week or two, then that may be the best way to go.
Well, and I'm okay if we have the shorter stays, but we're gonna have to have some kind of, and maybe licensing process is the right thing to say, but if you wanna have 5 of these or 4 of these, you wanna use them during horse shows and stuff, that's fine, but somebody from our team is gonna have to go check them, because we've got people abusing that system, there's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if a normal person can't park their RV and stay in it at their house, but we can have 5 of them here, and they can, you know, and everybody and their brother can stay there for as long as they want. That's not fair.
Right.
Thank you, Commissioner Zalek. Great points.
And Commissioner Zalek actually doesn't address everything that you were mentioning there. When I said that we had met with the Visitor and Convention Bureau as well as, we did not meet with the clerk of the court, but apparently the clerk of the court has a new software system of some sort. I don't know what it is.
Tax collector, you mean?
Tax collector.
Okay, they have a way that they are going to be able to implement a tracking on these, and they said that they will be able to go back and start looking into past approvals as well, so.
But here's the problem, though, is that we're taking, you know, and just like we separated out the kennels, right? We came up with that. It's very similar to that. There needs to be inspection on these, not just when somebody complains about it. There needs to be a general keep up with these things, because otherwise, you know, what happens 5 years from now? We haven't probably looked at some of these in 5 years because we don't have the manpower to go around, because we're not charging people to re-permit on a yearly basis or some sort, right? So we need to figure something out on this, on these in general. Maybe not the specific case, but overall, I think.
We have another one in the pipeline, so.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. And there are only gonna be more and more of these because we've started to permit them.
Great points. Do we have the applicant with us today?
Hello, I'm Jessica Markham at 20751 Northwest 87th Avenue Road in Micanopy.
Hello, Ms. Markham, welcome. And you've heard of some of our thoughts already.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to share a little bit before we open it up to the public?
Yes, ma'am. To address the dump site locations, there's 4 within 10 miles of us, and I have them if I need to say them. Okay. And then also, if need be, these people are not going to stay long term. I raise a family, a 3-year-old and 1-year-old there, and no, they're just family and friends stopping by. My husband, on his off days from City of Ocala firefighter, he ropes and trains horses. So these people are
So,
just
Ms.
coming
Markham,
to.
can you give us a timeline for how often you expect that
If
these?
they come for a long weekend, possibly. We do have some family out in Texas that if they come down for the winter, they said they may want to stay at our place and then jump around to some other people. So, like possibly a month or so. I don't know, but they're no long term. I don't.
Amazing how those people that are brother-in-laws just end up
I
staying.
know, they're like, oh, we can bring. And the other thing is, I know there's other RV sites we completely support, and like Grand Lake RV is right down the road. We've done plenty of support there. I've construction background, so we've done some stuff for them, but they don't have the facility to like our equestrian people do to bring a horse with them. If it was a dog, it's different. They can stay inside their trailer.
Yeah.
But these are, they can turn them out in our pasture and rope in
Will
their
you be
downtime, so.
charging any sort of rent?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No rent. Because Mr. Odom addressed that with me too. That's a whole different issue, and definitely, so I don't want to go there. So.
We're gonna open it up for
Okay.
public comment. You may wanna take a front row seat, because I do have one person who's signed up, and that is Richard Basile. Mr. Basile, if you'd like to come forward, just identify your name again and address. I hope I didn't butcher it.
No, you didn't.
And then if you'll just watch the lights across the top, as you're speaking of the podium.
Okay, my name's Richard Basile. It's 520 Northwest 35th Street, Ocala, Florida.
Yes, sir.
So, a couple years back, I spent probably a little over $250,000 renovating an RV park, which is within 10 miles of, this location that she's asking for this permit. So, I had some questions first, and then some other issues to address. That, tracking that they said that they'd be able to go back on and check, the different properties. It's a GIS system, so it can't see under the trees. It can't see like 90% of the RVs. Even the RVs on my park that are there, you can't see, and I have minimal trees left on, on the, any of the GIS systems. So that's not gonna be really great. In the past, and something that they're doing now, there's one across the street from the Ocala High building. They have an RV that's been in there for like 4 years. It's a vacant piece of land. They've built an old shed over the RV, so you can't even see it. And nothing's been done to address it. But there's like so many of those now, it's ridiculous. So since I came to the last board meeting, there's 10 new RVs within a mile of my RV park. Some of them are absolutely dilapidated RVs that are in people's front yards parked with like people that were kind of homeless that got evicted out of Ocala that are now living in these RVs in people's front yards. I've actually had to put in security cameras in my RV park now because I have them using my facilities 4:30 in the morning, just coming out. So I gave 3 RVs that were parked, obviously, within 1 mile of my house in Ocala. And, you know, I run into the same situation every time. It's like, first, either they're understaffed at the code office, you know, and some of the guys are sympathetic to the people that they have to live in RVs, you know, in certain situations. So they'll say, I got the wrong address, or I'm wrong, they're not plugged in, and then it makes it look like I'm not coming forward, you know, honestly about this. So then I have to go out there, take pictures of the RVs with their plugged-in facilities, with their slides out and everything else, and send them to Sam. And then he has to go back to his code officers guys and say, look, you know, they are plugged in, here's the plug, you know, blah, 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 blah. And in the past,
Mr. Basile, if you'll just wrap it up.
oh, all right, well, there's several things. Is there a limit of only 5 pedestals that they can get for special use permits in the county?
That's what this special use request
I
is
know, but
for.
I'm asking if there's a limit.
There is no limit.
So they can go ask for any amount? Okay. So a lot of times,
Mr. Basile, this may take much longer, so, I mean, specific to this particular request is what I need your comments on, and then I need you really to step away.
okay, so I have to get water testing from the state or the county. That's one of the things. Restroom facilities, I had to update my park to have the correct number of restroom facilities. I had to have X amount when I had only 10 spaces. I had to have, so I had to get a water tank put in case there's a fire because I had RVs on the property. That was a 10,000 gallon tank. That cost me over $5,000. And plus I came to the Board of County Commissioners with a similar request to just add a few spots, and I had to go and get an engineer. They wouldn't take the permit that I had written up by an engineer because he wasn't a certified engineer in this county or whatever the reason was. So I had to go get,
Mr. Basile, okay. I think we get it. You had to go through a lot more
and
detail.
it's a real impact you're putting on.
As a business owner,
And
yes, sir.
one other thing that's real important that you guys should know is, so when they ask for the permit, they all say the same thing. It's only gonna be friends and family, you know? And then they don't have to pay tax. But what happens is, my RV park, so I'm only getting long-term people because all these other places are getting these short-term people that would come to the parks. So then you're losing the tax from my place because if I have short-term people, but more than 50% of them are long-term, then I don't have to pay the bed and housing taxes. And that's a big problem.
Thank you, Mr. Basile. You've pointed out some very good points
Okay.
for us to consider. And I'll ask if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to come forward if you have an issue on this particular special use request, if you'd like to address this issue. If not, I'll bring the applicant forward again. Ms. Markham, you've heard Mr. Basile and the many requirements that he was forced to go through in order to have his business, an RV park.
Yes, ma'am. But I'm not doing that as a business, so I'm not of any concern to him because the people who are coming to stay with us are family and friends, yet whether or not they still wouldn't be able to go to his because they can't accommodate their horses.
Right. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was gonna be the point that I was actually gonna make. And while I sympathize with the struggles that you have going and the things that you're seeing within your industry, I think what they're trying to do here is completely different than what you provide. And you couldn't accommodate what they're doing with their friends and their family. I mean, you couldn't accommodate the animals, you couldn't accommodate the horses. So it's like comparing apples to oranges in this case. But
Yeah, can I just ask a question? Why is it really? Because, I mean, you can't have a theme park in some campsites, right? But you could take your camper down to Orlando, put it at a campsite, or you can go stay in a hotel, and then you can go to Disney World, right? Same thing could happen here, with all due respect to you. I
Right.
mean, I'm just pointing out the fact that if her friends and family came and they wanted to have their camper, there is no reason why they can't go there. And then how many thousands of people board horses and rent horse stalls all over Marion County, and they're not living on the site?
Well, obviously, Commissioner,
just saying.
but what she's doing is completely different than what
I
he's
mean-
doing. He's got
I
a
get it.
commercial operation, and it is very different. You know, it's providing an atmosphere where she can have family come in and stay for a weekend with their animals, and they can all stay on the same property. It's very different. Now, you
Okay,
can't
you
talk from the
can't speak
audience.
from the audience. And we're,
And anybody who has horses or that type of thing, while yes, you can put your camper here and you can go board your horses somewhere else, it's much more convenient and much more desirable for them to be right there on site with their animals.
and we're looking at, your property is 59.24
Yes, ma'am.
acres. Other comments?
I'll make motion to approve.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Gold with a second by Commissioner Bryant to approve the special use permit, and you've seen all of the conditions associated with that. Any further discussion?
I'm good, but I can't, I appreciate you, but without a septic tank and a limit on the days, I can't support it.
Put a limit on the days.
It's not my motion.
You can always.
I mean, that's my suggestion,
Suggest
is that we
that.
limit the days.
30
up-
days?
30 days, maximum stay. and a
working
septic
with
tank
that
is
Wait, wait,
installed.
In the county, you can do 60, correct?
Six-
Parked in your, parked in
60.
your front yard?
You can do 60.
60 days.
3 times a year.
You're not gonna have any friends there or family there over 60 days, correct?
Hope not. Don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Commissioners, it's 5 RVs for up to
You
60
can help her out by
days.
limiting it at only 30.
Yeah, 60 days, 60 days. I'll change the motion
And
to that.
my question back to that, then would a special use permit be even needed? Okay, I was just wondering, because I know, isn't there a certain allotment that
It would
you
have to
can't-
be your camper,
Oh, okay, that's what.
if you want to have, right? I mean, under
Right.
the current
It
county
can be
law.
your camper
It'd have to be
for
owned by you,
60
right?
days, 3 times a
Or no?
year only.
I'm not sure. I just why I was asking for clarification.
That is,
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
You can have relatives or something.
So you can have anybody come stay,
It's
but
can
how
be
many could
anybody.
you have? You could have 5 of them lined
Up
up?
to 5 for 60 days, and they can be anybody's.
Yeah, they don't have to be your own.
They can be anybody's.
Okay,
So,
all right.
so is the motion amended to allow for only 60 days
Yes, ma'am.
per camper?
Yes.
So how will we enforce that?
Well, there is, like I said, it has to be a guest. There can be no rental agreement, no trade for services or anything like that. It's your guest, it's there. I guess code enforcement is going to be one. The tax collectors, new services that they will have be available, that'll be a new tool. Like I said, we plan on working closely with them as well to make sure that we can start monitoring these as best we possibly can.
And they monitor all kinds of
Yeah,
different
and
things.
ma'am, just real quick,
Yeah.
without getting into it, and for the gentleman here too, just listen to what I say, no, you can't comment. But come to the next TDC meeting, we'll get you that information. The tax collector's gonna do a presentation on this. It's not a GIS system, it monitors data mining through all the internet sites. So if somebody posts something online and
That's-
starts collecting.
That's
they're
exactly
gonna
how it was
find
indicated to
out.
us, that
Yeah,
they are
so
watching to
it's
see
completely
if there are
different.
solicitations that are actively posted.
So that will take care of a lot of the issues.
And understand that if any of the special use conditions are not met, or if you deviate from any of these conditions, we'll pull your special use permit and then you can no longer do this.
Okay.
So the motion includes to add a 60-day limit on all RV stays, and with no more than 5 at a time.
Yes, ma'am.
And the second was by Commissioner Bryant.
5 times 60,
So any further discussion?
it's standard.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and all the best. That's going to take us to 14C4.
All right, Marion County, excuse me, Kenneth Odom, Marion County Growth Services, on 191006 SU, special use permit for Circle K Novia Group. This is a site at the corner of Sunset Harbor Road and US 441. Actually, the reason we're bringing this before you is because the staff initially recommended denial of the initial application. We've worked with Circle K and the Novia Group in order to make some accommodations that we feel are more reasonable, and they are amenable to. Just a little bit of background on the area. It's 10.67 acres. It's zoned as B2 among commercial land uses. It's also surrounded by B2, R1, R4, A1, some B4 and B5. Most of those B4 and B5 are RV sales and RV repair businesses. However, it is near 2 schools and a church, and like I said, it's among varied residential. The initial application that was submitted by Circle K and the Novia Group was for 35 large, oversized vehicle spots while they initiate a new prototype among the Circle Ks around the state. So we go to, this was the initial map that they submitted as far as the site plan was concerned. Our primary concern about the location was that it could possibly turn into a parking facility for heavy vehicles. That is not what we wanted to see happen at this location. That was the impetus behind the initial denial for the application at first. But like I said, the initial application was for 35 oversized vehicles. That's 16,000 pounds or more is what we're looking at, possibly a semi-trailer or semi with trailer. But we were looking at a lot of different things, especially from a transportation-related standpoint. Parking is at a premium for any type of commercial freight vehicles, all over the state, all over the nation. It's one of the things that I was looking at. There's some areas here, it's among carriers, it's the 9th greatest concern nationally. This is from the American Transportation Research Institute. It's the driver's second concern. Almost 2/3 of drivers admit to parking illegally at least 3 times or more a week. 10% park on a daily basis illegally, and very few admit to not parking illegally at all. There are a lot of other things that go along when you have essentially what we were scared of this becoming was a pop-up truck stop. It wasn't a residential area, it was near schools. It was also near the church, as I had mentioned before. Circle K had indicated that they had 2 other prototypes that have been activated within the state of Florida. One is in Alturas, which is just east of Bartow. Also one in Palmetto, Florida, which is north of Bradenton, Florida. When we looked at the volumes with these particular areas, they were lower than US 441, but both of these locations are on or very near the strategic intermodal system, which is the commercial and freight corridors as they're designated by the state of Florida. They are appropriate where they're located. Like I said, there's a lot of freight use that's indicated. That's what the T volume and T percentage is for these areas. In Palmetto, it was almost 16%. Alturas, it was 22%. Typically across the state, it's about 14 to 16. US 441 was nowhere near that at 5 and 5.8. That number has actually steadily been declining over the course of the last 14, 15 years. It's clear that that is not a heavily used freight corridor. There are oversized vehicles that do use the corridor, and that's one of the things that we were actually able to come to an agreement with with Circle K. There are a lot of commercial vehicles that are small that have trailers that do use 441 in order to service their clients in Summerfield, also in the villages. It's also next to Lake Weir. There's a lot of people that are towing trailers and things like that. So with that being said, there were conditions that were put. We're recommending approval of conditions, but this is the model site plan that they have submitted. We find that this is much more suitable. It doesn't allow for just parking, a multitude of concentrated parking This allows for vehicles to come through the gas pumps. They have 40 diesel pumps that they're putting on the backside of the store. This also allows for an expanded DRA. They're placing or investing a significant amount of money in the reconditioning of this site. Like I said, this is a new prototype. You'll be able to pull through the fast pump diesels and park in these slips that are for oversized vehicles. Even if you have a gas vehicle, you can still use the regular gas pumps and then come around, come in, get your things out of the truck, run to the store, get some ice, beer, soda, snacks, whatever, anything of that nature. So staff is recommending approval of the location. This is the store itself. I believe Mr. Peter Pence is here also. He is the consultant that's been hired by Novia Group. He has a brief presentation that he would also like to present for you as well.
Very good. Please come forward. And if you'll just give your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Pence. I'm a AICP certified planner with Avenue Group, civil engineers, planners, and surveyors representing Circle K stores as well as the property owner. I've got a brief presentation I'm going to give you, or I'm going to try to make it brief, and then
Thank you, Mr. Penza.
for the sake of your brevity for your time. The gas station is an existing store. You saw an aerial photograph previously showing that it's there. It's been there for 3 decades. It's a long-term neighbor. It's been there in existence without any issues. During site plan review for the redevelopment of the gas station that is functionally obsolete, Circle K is improving all their assets across the state as well as across the country to bring them up to modern standards, add more services that people are looking for, both in terms of the convenience store, but also the way they get fuel. And so with that, during the review, staff pointed out to us that commercial vehicles is considered a special exception use, or excuse me, a special use permit item in the B2 zoning district. And so that's why we applied for this application. This is the zoning map that you saw in your commission packet. As you can see, the property is completely, the current store is the smaller property circled in blue. The expanded store goes into the portion of the larger property that wraps around it. The property is entirely surrounded by B2, and there's also B4 and B5 zoning all along the corridor. To give you and I rotated the view so it would fit. The Circle K store, again, is right here. Right next to us is a boat and RV storage facility that was recently constructed. I'll come back to that in a minute. There's a self-storage facility just basically a block down the street. There's a used RV dealership here. There's a used RV dealership here, new RV dealership, RV resort located here. And then Lake Weir is just off the screen up here to the east. The area is heavily used by people that are using storage facilities, that are doing recreational activities like boating, RV resorts, and those are the customers that are using the store. This is the site plan for the RV storage next door. They were required to put in a cross access, and we have to connect into that cross access as well. So people come to pick up their boat, they can come through the frontage road, stop, fuel up, run in the store, get their ice, get their sodas, and so on, and then go out, enjoy the day. Again, this is, like staff said, this is the original plan. Listening to them, we reduced the amount of parking. They suggested 15. We actually came back and reduced it further to 10, based on the ability to have a view of that parking area, and also for convenience for people when they fill up to be able to pull into those spaces. And then this will just remain as open space, and we expanded the pond area some as well. The type of person that's coming to the store is not a long haul trucker. It's not an over-the-road trucker that's going to a Flying J or a Love's Truck Stop or one of those type facilities. It's the day trip trucker, if you will. It's a recreational user. It's the moving trucks. It's the delivery trucks. It's the people in your neighborhood. You can see this is one day screenshot from Google Earth Street View. You'll see it's the landscaper that's coming to your house and doing maintenance on your property. It's the U-Haul truck for the neighbor that's moving in on the block down the street from you. You can see that same truck from the other street. It's the FedEx driver that's delivering your Amazon package. It's, I think that was a car carrier, but there's a flatbed truck over here. So it could be a local car dealership. I got a couple areas. I'm going to go real fast through this. Stop me if you have any questions. But here's an example from 2017. What's happening now is people are parking on the road. This is a truck with some kind of trailer behind it. Here's another one where there's some kind of box truck. It could be a FedEx or U-Haul or whatever. Here's another one. You can see it sort of blocks the flow of traffic coming in because of it. Here's a different truck, some kind of flatbed with a tank or something on the back. And it's not the fuel truck because the fueling is right here, as you can see the filling holes there. Here's another aerial from a year before that. Someone had to park their vehicle and their trailer diagonally across 3 or 4 or 5 parking spaces because there's no place to park, and there were 3 other vehicles either parked or in this case coming in. Here's again 2 more vehicles, another one. Going back in time, this one here shows that the truck actually is parked partially into the drive aisle, impeding the flow of traffic. So again, these are people that are in your neighborhood. It's the local businesses. It's the furniture store just down the street from them that has delivery trucks that are going out. Staff had proposed conditions in the original staff report. We presented our proposed changes to that and underlying strike through. We reduced it to 10 spaces in condition number 6. We had concern about the original wording was to have a 3-year special use permit duration. Circle K is getting ready to invest between $6 and $7 million on rebuilding the facility. They need to have obviously assurance that the use is going to be around that they can recoup the cost of doing that. So what we proposed was sticking with 3 years, having a 3-year approval with automatic 3-year reapprovals administratively, as long as they're not have a pattern of violating the code or the conditions of the approval. The planning P&Z listened to that. They actually said, you know what, 3 years really isn't enough. How about a 5-year increment with automatic 5-year renewals? And so that's why I show that again in the red and the asterisks. But the idea is that they're a good neighbor. They've been here for 30 years already, or almost 30 years, and they intend to do so going forward as well. And so they need to be able to have assurance that their investment is going to be able to pay off over time. The staff report, we do appreciate staff. We've been working with them, made a lot of changes to accommodate and address their concerns. It's not going to be a truck stop facility. I'm not going to go into those details, but all those other conditions are all things that a truck stop would do. This is not a truck stop. It doesn't have showers. It doesn't have any of those kind of services. We do have some concern with the recommendations in staff's revised report. They did recommend increasing to 5 years, but it does say that it may be renewed administratively, and if there's no complaints or code violations filed against it. If there's part of the plan is that if someone is trespassing and they don't leave, we would have to call Circle K would have to call the sheriff, and so now there would be an issue with a trespass, loitering, whatever the term would be, issue, and would that mean we wouldn't get our automatic renewal at that point? So we still propose that it be an automatic administrative renewal process. The concern is even with the way it's written, it would be 3, in staff's recommendation, it would be 3 5-year periods. Well, what happens if someone doesn't realize 15 years from now? Hopefully I'm not going to be tracking this at that point. I'm sure a lot of people at Circle K will probably be gone retired or moved on to other positions. So are they now going to be in violation of their special use permit? They're going to have to shut down because they forgot to apply for it in advance of that period of time. So we do have concern about that. We do understand the concerns. We want to make sure we're a good neighbor, even with the language that I have, which was proffered by us as a way to try to work with the county. We do understand that obviously you need to be a good neighbor and not violate it. We do need to have rules in place to make sure that people don't loiter on the property, but we also need to make sure that they're able to run a business successfully there.
Very good, Mr. Pensa. I'm sure you would tow that vehicle immediately if it were parking overnight.
Yes, we have to, part of it is we'll have to put together a plan that'll be approved by code enforcement and the sheriff and planning staff. that will dictate it. We'll probably put in place some kind of process for monitoring, routinely doing it, perhaps like meter maids do. Go out and chalk mark tires, and if you come back through in 2 hours and you see it's there, and then it's there at 4 hours, which is what the limitation is, then we would have to ask them to leave. If they don't, then we would get the sheriff involved, because at that point they're trespassing. But we'll work out those details.
Right. Commissioner Bryant?
And Madam Chair, I was gonna actually talk about the 3-year,
Automatic.
limit as well. What kind of a capital investment is Circle K gonna be making here?
It's gonna be $6 to almost $7 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money, for a 3-year commitment.
Yeah, which if
Well, they said 5 years with
5 years with a
automatic renewals.
3-year auto renewals is what we've proposed, but you're concerned that you'd be out of compliance if someone is found to be loitering. You don't want that to be held against you.
Right.
I don't think that we would do that. The special use permit, someone would have to actually file a complaint that you're not living up to these conditions.
So it says at least 1 month so what you're asking for is an automatic renewal, and then if we're going to have a public hearing because we think there's some type of violation, that we send you a notice 1 month ahead of time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're clear there.
Yeah.
I think, and then the 15 years, who's gonna be around to monitor that was also your concern. Do we give advance notification, and that's something for staff to be able to answer as these come up? Do we flag them in our own system and start working with?
Madam Chairman, usually it's the applicant that monitors that, and then when it comes back, they reapply, it goes before us, and then it can be done standard, as we're talking about now, or administratively, but typically it's the applicant.
The applicant
Yes,
actually
ma'am.
makes that monitoring, so that would fall back to you, Mr. Pensko,
Right.
to Circle K.
Right, and that is a concern for us, obviously.
That's something you'd have to work out your internal systems. We could not commit to you that we're gonna reach out to you.
Right.
That would-
And that's why we asked that it not be included, that as long as Circle K is being a good neighbor, there's no reason not to let it continue forward in perpetuity. The code that triggers this is, just for reference, is code section 2.8.3, paragraph E, and I'm gonna read it because it's just one sentence. The section's called P and Z hearing. It says time limit. The P and Z may recommend a reasonable time limit within which the use for which the SUP is required to be started or completed. So it's not a requirement that there be a time limit. I understand that it is a matter of probably policy, or at least what's been historically done, that's been the case, but it's not a requirement of the code to put a limitation on it.
We hear your request.
I think Ken has different information.
The other way around this is we can just go with a 15-year special use,
Yes.
or they could rezone it to R3.
Well, I'm very cautious about redoing anything that's been noticed. You know, whatever he noticed for is what we're here to talk about today. If we're gonna renotice something, then we're gonna
And
start
we
all
can
over.
We can set the period for 15 years. At that time, it's up to the applicant to reapply.
How long do you amortize the investment over?
You'll need to come forward if you have a question for anyone in the audience, or if whoever you're looking forward to getting some information from, they need to
Well,
come
15
forward.
Is 15 years enough?
I gotta find out from Circle
Yeah,
K.
we did one for 20.
Right, 20's, I'm fine with 20.
If you'll just give your name and address for the record, please.
Mike Higgins, 3802 Corporex Drive, Tampa, Florida. I'm with Circle K.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
I was just curious about the investment. Is it amortized over a 5-year period, 10-year period, 15, 20?
We kind of look at it closer to over a 20-year period, but at the same time, it's an asset that we want to be around for the next 100 years or
Well,
so.
sure, sure. All right, so the question is for you and your client, would you rather us do 5-year renewals, and we monitor that, or something like 15 or 20 years one time, and then you just come back and you'll get notice to reapply?
Yeah, the most important thing is that we get noticed. I prefer the 20-year.
We're not going to give notice.
15 years.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we do give notice that.
That's not
we-
what I'm hearing
No, no, we
from
get-
staff.
All I'm saying, Madam Chair, is that every time a special use is up, we give notice that they need to come and renew.
So
We-
if I can
so if
get
we did a-
clarity on that, because
we do.
Mr. Odom just told me though that we did not.
He's new.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Bring him along.
I know we
Yes,
give-
we
I
do
know we
send
give
notice.
notice.
I know, but I didn't hear that from the person I asked the question of.
Sam.
We do. We send notice.
Okay,
Okay, so
thank
In
you.
advance. Well,
And so any other time, so if we have a complaint and we need to come back for a hearing, okay, or our staff feels like, that there's been a violation of the special use permit, you would get notice to come back to that hearing anyway,
Right.
in the course of time, so.
And it's a 30-day notice?
It's gotta be,
it's
more
probably
than, it's
longer
probably
than that.
longer than that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
One at a time.
60 to 90 days, probably.
That's much better.
And
So-
so,
Okay, so we've not taken public comment on this.
I'm just
We
trying
hear
to-
the request.
I
That,
know.
and so this board can make some discussion, and you'll have a chance to come back if you want to sit in the front row here. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Discussion from the board at this point is to allow a longer one-time special use permit.
I'm ready to make a motion as soon as we close public comment.
All right.
So I'm ready to do motion too.
Well, then I'm gonna ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to come forward to talk about this particular special use request. Seeing no one in the audience, then I will now bring it back to the board.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for approval with the term, or the term of the permit being 20 years
20 years. Okay,
with
I'll second
a
that.
renewal to come after that.
Okay, I'll second that.
So all of the conditions that have been,
And all of the conditions that are,
requested, with the exception of number 9, the special use may, will be for a period of 20 years, and the perpetuity, they ask for perpetuity.
At least one.
So,
So at that time, this, what you can put is that, at that point, it just needs to be renewed. So it'll go through a standard process,
a
right?
20-year renewal, do you want to put a condition that it will automatically renew one additional time with no issue? Which, that gives them 40 years.
Yeah.
Or is it just a 20-year? I just want to get clarity
I'm good.
after listening to what the applicant was.
I think all you have to say is the special use permit is good for 20 years.
I don't think you can, I think you could say the special use permit shall be valid for 20 years, at which time it will be subject to an automatic renewal.
Right.
No, we don't ever put that in there.
Well, but
automatic
we
renewal.
can.
We can.
We
right?
can.
And you could do it
Am I right,
administratively.
Mr. Mentor?
You can do it administratively.
You can, it's getting
I
quite,
know, because we're going to be sitting in
quite
these
far
chairs.
beyond what was in the agenda package, but,
Are we gonna get sued for that?
No.
I doubt
Okay.
it.
No, we're
Then
just
let's do
adding a
it.
condition
Yeah, I
here.
know.
Just
It's up to
If we're
you,
not
you
gonna
all
be
just have
sued
to
for it.
make a
for
motion
time-
and decide.
Put the language
which
in
one.
there for a time period of 20 years with an administrative renewal at that time. And if there's any issues in between then and now, we're going to know about them, and
Right.
they're going to be back before us.
Right. And
Sounds good.
I mean, they're making a $6 to $7 million investment.
Right. It's not cheap.
So I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant for a 20-year special use permit with administrative renewal. And I'm looking for a
I will
second,
second.
and I've got that by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your investment into Marion County. We wish you to be great success there.
Thank you.
That's gonna take us to our last item of the day.
Thank you.
Of course, that's Steve Tillman.
Somewhere.
Okay.
You have a new one.
Okay, maybe that's what.
Got a new one.
Gotcha.
14C5, there's a kind of amended, that's going to be the presentation, so you can read it there as well.
Welcome back, Mr. Martzoff. We
Thank-
like it when you come forward.
Thank you. 14C5 is a request for the modification of a existing special use permit. The board will remember you granted on August 20th of this year permit for a sand mine on this particular piece of property to Mr. Chris Bennett and Mr. Stokes, and the approval of that came with some conditions. And we've run into a little bit of trouble with some of the conditions, and we're running up against some time on some other conditions, so I thought it best to bring it back sooner rather than later. The conditions that are at question here are on the screen, and they're highlighted on the first two sheets of what I handed out. They're item 3, that required that there be no, prior to any excavation or modification of the site, the engineer had to have a major site plan submitted. The second condition had to do with the traffic study and the ingress and egress, the traffic methodology, and that timing again goes back to that special use permit. The fifth item was the applicant had an obligation to commit to maintenance of the access to the site, and that included providing some type of proof and evidence of the permission to use the railroad from the railroad owner for ingress and egress to that facility and that operation. It's been very difficult to get any type of permission from the railroad to do anything on any of our crossings that we have. It's become very difficult on this one. They've hired an attorney to search it. He's worked with us for a couple of weeks, and we were unable to come up with anything timely. It would be, I think in their exact words, several years potentially, and they don't know if they would ever give specific permission for specific crossing. Mr. Tillman has found where DOT has recognized it as a public access, and he will present that. But staff is going to propose alternate conditions at the end of this presentation that would eliminate that requirement, the railroad portion of that. Number 8 was the last condition, and it included a all-out ban on burning on the property. And what has occurred is, as some clearing is occurring now prior to the mining, there is some burning going on, so there's going to be slight language change to that to allow the burning under a permit, of course, up until the time the mining starts.
So,
Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, may
Yeah,
I?
absolutely.
So, Mr. Martzoff, we're basically here for alternative language on 3 different items on the original special use permit.
Yes, ma'am, and also remaining unclear is exactly what the trucking aspect of that, the stockpiling of material on site is coming from a road project up a little bit north of here, and that's not a normal operation on an agricultural piece of property, and it could be included in this special use permit, or it could be prohibited as an outright use of that property in conjunction with the mine. Once the mine gets going, there's going to be trucks in and out of there. It'll be hard to tell what's going on, but currently there's just a lot of trucks coming in with some stockpile material, and that they'll address how many and how long that's going to last. It may be over now.
Madam Chair? So
Yes,
Sam,
Commissioner.
did they continue to build that berm after our meeting?
That was what I was going to show you here. There's stockpile material that extends almost all the way across the property in a line there, kind of parallel with the power line easement. And then this is the berm that was constructed on both the south and the west side of the southern portion of the west side of the property.
And that wasn't there when we had the hearing, right?
No,
Or
sir.
was?
No. No, that was constructed afterwards. It was
before
believed
we
by the applicant that they could start doing that ahead of time, ahead of the major site plan. So they got started with that. And I assume Mr. Tillman will tell us where the major site plan is. But one of the conditions was that the site plan be given as part of 3, along with the traffic study and the major site plan. They be given 90 days to get to do the major site plan and traffic study, and we're already at 45 days. So, it doesn't look like that's going to happen in time. So, not the staff's fault. It only takes us 14 days first review, 5 days second review. In between that, there's a weekend or two, 25 days max staff time review. But so we gave initially 90 days. It may take longer than that.
Simply because we don't have it.
Right.
Okay, not because we can't produce it during that time
No, we
frame.
couldn't have.
Right.
I'm sure Mr. Tillman's gonna tell us why he hasn't gotten the site plan back to us yet.
Again, it's no fault of staff. We have an expedited process.
Thank you.
He's starting to
The applicant.
sound like-
David Tillman,
Representing
Tillman
the-
Associates Engineering, 1720 Southeast 16th Avenue, Building 100, Ocala, Florida, 34471. I was planning on getting up here and blaming Sam entirely, and he has all this defense already, so I guess I'll just go ahead and take the blame for it.
Just own
No,
up to it.
No, the thing is, we're still waiting on the soil borings. If you remember, y'all said that the staff said that the soil borings that we had were not adequate to provide all the information that they wanted, so we've hired a geotechnical engineer to go back out and do soil borings. With the industry booming like it is, we still don't have that report back. We have the site plan complete except for establishing the bottom of the mine pit, which will be based off of the geotechnical information that we get back. So we're waiting. We've got it 90% done, but I can't, if I give it to you, you're gonna come back. The first comment I'm gonna get is, where's the soil boring information to back up this data? And it's not there. So since I don't have it, I wasn't going to, we weren't gonna make a submittal. I do have a couple of things. I think, I've got some pictures of the berm construction. I don't think you need them. We all know that it was done. We said it was done. They've got quite a bit of revenue sitting there on the ground wanting to get it started. They were a little overzealous, went out there and constructed a berm, which was part of the criteria for their special use permit. I understand they got it out of order, that the site plan was supposed to be completed first. I mean, they jumped on that day one after they left here. I mean, so they went immediately to put the berm in place because it's one of the criteria of the special use permit. So they got it out of order a little bit. I don't see, it really doesn't cause any harm to any neighbors because it's going to be, it was part of the criteria anyway. So, I mean, really all we have for that is an apology that we did it out of order. I did go on to the federal, I'll wait to speak until I'm passing those down. Take one and pass it. If you look on this, this is a Federal Railroad Administration website. You can go on there and you can pull up railroad crossings. And if you'll look at the, there it has the crossing number of 627151A in the state of Florida, Florida Northern Railroad, I believe. And the type of crossing is a public, at grade, and the status is open. So, I mean, to me, that says that's for use by the public, and we are the public, and therefore I hope that that satisfies the requirement that we can use this, continue to move forward and use this railroad crossing. As far as the burning that occurred on site, the burning that occurred on site was from the existing vegetation that was on site. They cleaned up around that single-family home that was there. It was completely grown up whenever they purchased the property. So they cut all that nuisance vegetation down, piled it up, and burned it on site. There hasn't been any burning. I think the intent of that, no burning, because that was asked in the very beginning when we were applying for this, can we burn on-site material that's hauled from another site? The answer, of course, in front of this board was no. They only burned what was their own site, and that's all that they would do. They were not planning on hauling anything in and burning. That was only on-site material. And when they were doing the berm, they trimmed some tree limbs, and they piled those and burned those. So nothing additional off-site. So I think that we can agree with all the criteria that Sam's listed here in the alternative language conditions, and I hope that you'll accept our apology for moving forward with the construction of the berm early.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can you address I know that there's some material that is being stored on site that's being used for another job. Can you let us know how long that is expected to be there? How long you're expected to have activity in and out of there?
There's been no activity in and out of there. That material was on site from cleaning up, work that was done on the power line, and let's see, I wrote my notes as I asked the question myself. And the majority of that dirt that's in that windrow was there prior to the application of the special use permit. So some of it was brought on site, some of it was generated whenever they were cleaning and prepping the site. And it was done, you know, I mean, they came to me and asked me, hey, do we need a special use permit to do this? And I'm like, yeah, you do. So that's whenever they kind of stopped, but they had already done some. There was already some on the ground. That was there in the pictures whenever I think we came forward with our request for our special use permit. You know, the additional dirt brought on site for the berm was certainly done after the special use permit was granted. And like I said, that was out of order. So if you give us the ability to haul that off site right now, we'll start hauling it off site right now. If you tell us to wait until we get our major site plan approved, we'll wait until we get our major site plan approved. But we would love to move that off site and do no additional digging on site. That would be fantastic for us to be able to move it out of there.
So is it there for, it's there for another job, for somewhere else?
Well,
Being
it's,
held for another job to go somewhere else?
it will, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Basically, so,
all
I
right.
mean,
And how, I mean, if you want us to tell you yes, get it out of there, we just are gonna need some specifics. How long are you gonna be in and out of there? How long is it gonna take you to get it out of there? What can we expect as far as that's concerned?
I would say we could have it out of there in 45 days. I'll look for a nod to make sure I'm correct, within 45 days.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Zalek?
Sam, you shouldn't, you're saying it's road work. They're saying it's on site.
Yeah.
Well, these load tickets were dated the 18th of September. We were there on the 24th of September.
Where are the load tickets from, David?
This is,
I don't know, I didn't know about the load tickets. I mean, I think they're from the berm material that was brought in, correct?
So if he's coming forward, we'll just let
Okay,
him.
let him answer
so
that
this
question.
was approved August 20th, I believe. Yeah, August 20th, the special.
If you'll just give your name and address for the record, please.
Chris Bennett, 300 Southwest 36th Place, Ocala, Florida. So as owner of the mine, we got a couple things going on. I own CGB Construction Group, completely separate entity. I'm a general contractor here in town. I own 2 dump trucks. Right now, those 2 dump trucks are contracted on the State Road 20 project in Melrose. So we got a couple of things going on here. The dirt that's there did not come back from the State Road 20 project in Melrose. There was a question when Mr. Sam came out and met me on the property. There was a question, there was a complaint basically that, hey, these guys are open. They're moving dirt. There was a Facebook post that my son made. It said, it was a CGB Construction Group post and said, you need fill dirt, you need site work, we do it, whatever. Well, that photograph was taken on State Road 20 in Melrose, Florida. We're contracted through P&S Paving. And the photograph that was posted on Facebook, it's not even our machine that's in the photograph. It's on a completely different site. So I don't know where the complaint came from, but I think that folks got things twisted 2 different ways. We've got a sand mine that we are trying to get a special use permit on, and we're happy to comply with whatever conditions you guys put on us there. CGB Construction Group still has to work to make a living while we're getting the sand mine open. And hopefully we'll keep working after that. So the dirt that is coming in, there is no more dirt coming in. When we thought that we could build a berm, we accepted unsuitable materials. So it's a combination, unsuitable materials, the cleanup we did on site because the place was a disaster. The power line company did work on the power line and redid all of that. So it's a combination of material that was just put up in a windrow and stored. We did use that material then to build the berm. So that's how it came. But there is no dirt coming in from anywhere.
So there is no storage. Is there, well, I think
There was dirt coming in. I did not say that there was. What I said was there's 2 different projects going on. State Road 20 project that's going on, my trucks run up there all the time. The dirt that came in came from Boutwell Construction. But that's been months and months ago. But there is currently no dirt coming in. We don't have any of that going on.
so Mr. Bennett, do you have any material stored on that property that's going to leave that property?
There's 700 loads probably in that pile that we could move with permission. We stopped because we were like, well, when I left here, I'm a pretty plain talk fella. So when I left here and y'all said you need a 6-foot berm, you need a fence, you need vegetation, the berm was done in a week. And it was in that week time frame that I found out you're not allowed to build the berm.
You guys just wanted to get out there and play on your equipment, didn't you?
Well, a little bit of that too. We're ready to start making a living out there. But anyway, so that's what happened. We literally left and built the berm. There hasn't been any other activity outside of that. It's sitting there. We would love to get rid of it, but we're just stopped until
But
you
you
guys
have to
get
keep a
instruction.
berm.
Ma'am?
There's two piles of dirt.
Right.
One's the
Okay.
berm, and then there's one that just runs through the middle of the property. And the
Okay.
one that's running through the middle of the property is is clean material that could be used on a job site. If y'all give us permission to haul that off, we would start hauling it tomorrow. But if we don't have permission to move it, then we'll wait until we open up our mine and then we'll move it then. But we would ask that you would allow us just to haul that off site and remove it.
And there is no mining going on the
Right,
property.
there's no mining going on,
Okay.
it's just sitting there.
Okay, now I understand.
Right.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I do understand that.
The problem is though, is that when you guys were
Berm and a
here,
berm.
when you-
Yeah.
the problem is though, Madam Chair, is when you guys were here and you started that berm ahead of time, even before you came for the special use permit, we told y'all to stop at that hearing. To stop before,
I don't-
before the site plan. Yes, absolutely. The neighbors were here. They were talking about it, David.
So, let me clarify that.
We told you all to
Mr.
stop building the berm at that time, and y'all went out and did it again, and then you pulled up a whole nother windrow in the middle of it.
The windrow has been there the whole time.
That's fine.
Yeah, so when you guys told us to stop, it was in reference to the materials that were coming in. The berm wasn't built until we left for the special use permit. We haven't done anything else except for that berm. So we didn't double do it there. We literally, there was materials on site.
When you guys came for the permit, there were pictures of dump truck loads of material
Yes,
on the
sir.
site, and we told y'all to stop that activity until we got the major site plan.
And we did.
Okay.
We did. There's 2 foot
There's
of
a new
grass on
berm
that.
there.
What are you saying?
That's
What he's
two
saying-
totally different
Two
things.
different things.
I think
There is a new berm. They
I
built
know.
the berm.
Yeah, absolutely. We
Afterwards.
completely admit, I told you that was what we started, I led with, is that,
I know.
it got built out, the timing was wrong, but they did not continue to haul material on the site after that,
I
after
got
that
you,
date.
David. I
And so-
understand the same thing.
Okay, I think we understand what's happening there now today. Go ahead,
Madam
Commissioner
Chair, I'll be
Bryant.
ready to address this after we do public hearing, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Do we have it, well, Mr. Tillman, did you have anything else or did the
I mean,
board
other-
have anything else?
Other than I was
for him?
surprised to hear that Marion County has Big Brother installed a while ago from at the property appraiser's website. And then, also that, I like water towers. I think they look like big white fluffy clouds up there. I think we shouldn't have to do
Oh,
anything.
my
Of
goodness.
course you do, David.
Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to come forward to address this issue? It doesn't look like there's anyone in the audience coming forward, so I'll bring it back to the board.
All right, Madam Chair, as I was the one who was rather insistent on the railroad agreement, and now we all have a better understanding of that, myself included, I'm fine with that, with redoing condition number 5. And I'm also fine with condition number 3 and condition number 8. And I don't have a problem with them removing that material that's sitting there. That's not mining activity. It gets the property out of there. So, because they're gonna have to get, more than likely, they're gonna have to get that material out of there when they get their site plan done. So I don't have a problem with them getting that out of there. I'll move for approval.
For how long though? Have to get it out of there, how long?
Well, they're gonna have to have it done before we approve their major site plan, right?
Well, I think they just need some criteria, Commissioner.
They've
'cause
got 180 days to get that major site plan in. I think that they wanna get
now?
it out of there. That's
Or from the date of the special use permit.
from the date of, is your 180 days from the date of? And we've
Yeah, it
talked to
was
the
from
engineer
the-
to make
From
sure
the
that that's.
special use permit
From the
approval.
date of August 20th.
And we've had testimony by the applicant that they could have it out of there within 45 days. I think we're gonna fall well within the 180 days.
Right.
So I'm gonna move for approval
With the
of
alternate
the
language.
alternate conditions and the modification of this special use permit.
I'll maintain my second.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant with a second by Commissioner Gold with the alternate language for the special use permit on items 3, 5, and 8, and also with the agreement to remove the additional material that's been put there, as that does not have anything to do with the mining.
Now, no more material is to be brought in there. Nothing else is to be done until we get the site plan done and we get our mining operation underway.
Okay, so any further discussion with the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
I'll move to adopt the ordinance.
Thank you.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Bryant to adopt the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. This meeting is now adjourned.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? I mean, I know that it's adjourned, but I was just still wondering.
Do you need us to come back?
No.
Okay.
I was just still wondering, I mean, if we just kind of, I think that RV thing needs some attention. And so, as the chair, I was hoping you could bring us back something, from a discussion topic. I think it's important that we
Start looking at that.
get some kind of a regular regulation for those things.
I think we all agree on that.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
Thank you all.
All right,
Okay.
we better say that we're back on and put that officially on the, okay, so we're still on? All right, and then we're not, now we can,
At some point, we'll bring something back.
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah,
Now
that way
we're-
nobody can say we just did anything outside sunshine.
Good point.
So do you want to
Good
be
point.
adjourned now?
You got it? Okay.
Okay,
And
now.
so now we are adjourned. Thank
we're
you.
adjourned.
Just one comment for those of you
Okay,
going
now
to.
Do
we're
I
not
need to
adjourned.
bring it back?
We're not
We're not adjourned.
No, this is just,
Okay, we're not on record.
yeah.
We're off.
Yeah.